Hello everyone, it's Instructor Howard. We are in week 4 of BC3020. Now I'm really excited to go over this particular breaking down coding cases video for the integumentary system because it's a really easy case. And as you go through the weeks and you have been paying attention to the different portions of the videos, you'll realize that abstracting is really easy. So I want to give kudos to all of you who have been completing your coding exams every week. You're doing a wonderful job. I can tell that with the use of the resources and the videos and possibly some tutoring labs that you guys are learning a lot, and you will be excellent coders at the end of this particular term, and you will move on to BC 3030, and you will also have similar cases, but you will be dealing with different organ systems. So today we're going to be coding for, once again, integumentary, and our case covers a mastectomy. This is a really easy case. I actually don't think you guys need a video for it, but I'm going to provide one just in case so that you can make sure that you're accurate. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so here we are. We have our location highlighted. We have the name of the surgeon, and we also have our postoperative diagnosis. Now remember, I usually only focus on the postoperative diagnosis because this is the diagnosis that the provider has determined is the actual problem that the patient has after her examination or surgery. So they are one and the same, but I've only highlighted postoperative. Sometimes this diagnosis changes, and you will probably see that in some of the other cases. So our postoperative diagnosis is right breast cancer. Now, it doesn't explain to us the type of cancer, whether it's basal cell carcinoma, whether it's squamous cell. So we're fine with just using cancer. And for those of you who took, you've all taken BC2010 or BC2011, you've learned about the neoplasm table. So the neoplasm table is where all sorts of cancers are located in the ICD-10 alpha index. So I'm going to add the word neoplasm here because it's a growth. A neoplasm is a growth on the skin. Just so happened that her growth has become cancerous, and the location, where is it? The right breast. Now for ICD-10 coding, we could possibly locate the code for the right or the left breast. So we'll pay attention to that when we get to our coding portion of the video. Now we have procedure performed. Once again, right side of the body. So you know in CPT coding, you don't have an actual code that specifies right or left. It's either, you're going to use a modifier for the right side of the body, or a modifier for the left side of the body, or a modifier 50 for bilateral. So that's what we will be doing today as well. We have the mastectomy is our main term, and the type, radical modified. And the reason I only highlighted the mastectomy is because this is how we're going to locate our procedure in the alphabetic index. And then from there, these are our subterms. So this is the procedure, what's happening. This is where, basically, or the type, because we know that mastectomy or mass, the word mass in itself represents the breast. So this right here is an alternate term for the breast. And ectomy is to cut or remove. Let me go back. It goes here. All right, so now we know how to break down our words and what's being done and how it's being done and which side of the body we would code this for. We can move on. So as you can see, I have nothing highlighted in here about the procedure itself or how the procedure happened because once we get to the alpha index, we'll determine if we need to come back and review this information. So based on the short description of the procedure and the postoperative diagnosis, we can begin our search. Now, I like to always look down the page at the bottom of the report when I'm dealing with diagnosis to determine if he's adding or if he's telling me some more information about her diagnosis. For example, he sees that she has breast cancer. He did a mastectomy, which basically he used a scalpel and cut her open to remove the breast and take a biopsy. And as you can see, he did pull a sample of the tissue. That's what a biopsy is. He pulled a sample of the tissue. Usually when you see that a biopsy was rendered, we may end up with a pathology report giving us more detail about the type of cancer or what happened once the biopsy was taken and he examined the tissue and all of that other good stuff. That's not mentioned here. So we're fine with just dealing with right breast cancer. So in this case, we're going to actually begin with our procedure. And usually I start with the diagnosis, but it doesn't matter. So this time we're going to start with the procedure. So you know our main term is mastectomy. And then from there, we're going to look in the index to see if this is all we need to do. All right. 1 second. Let's get to our CPT. Make sure you have your CPT index open. Okay, hopefully you've gotten your CPT index, or if you've had it open already, you've probably already located your code, because as I told you, this is a really easy case to code. So our main term in the index was mastectomy. And when you get to mastectomy, you know, your subterms are indented underneath. And in our case, the provider did a modified radical mastectomy. And let me look at the case to make sure that's exactly what it said. Right modified radical mastectomy. Here it is, mastectomy, modified radical. And that's our reference code. So this is the index portion of my book, and here is my tabular portion of my CPT manual. And the tabular is basically the sections within the CPT that we code from, or that we come back to once we get our reference codes. So we can see where we are, where we located, and it's important that you know where you're located because your test questions will ask you where in the tabular is your code found. We're in the surgery section, and in the surgery section, the subsection is integumentary system. Then we have the category of breast, and we have the subcategory of mastectomy procedures. So this is exactly where we are. And as you can see, the code begins with the number 1. Now, here's a little hint. When you're coding for your different sections or organ systems, we know that in the surgery section of the CPT, every section has its own code range. So the integumentary system begins with the 1s. So since we're dealing with breast tissue and breast mass, we're in the right spot. But if you have pulled a code that begins with a 3 or a 4, then that lets you know that you're in the wrong section. The 3s represents the cardiovascular and respiratory, and the 4s are for gastrointestinal system. So that's a hint right there. If you find yourself in a section coding that you know for a fact that the procedure is rendered in another organ system, then you need to start over. The only time that you may end up in a different section or subsection is when there is a radiology or imaging guided procedure included or coded with your procedure, which usually happens, and then your codes will begin with the number 7. So as you can see my screen here, and hopefully you guys can see this, is giving us the full description of the code. mastectomy, modified radical, including axillary lymph nodes with or without pectoralis, minor muscle, but excluding pectoralis, major muscle. Now, let's look at the case. Okay, so I have pulled the case again so that you guys can see, and I've already highlighted those particular words that are in the description of the code so that we can see that the provider rendered these services. We have the word pectoralis, and we're matching up our code description to the terms in the case as closely as possible. So based on the information highlighted in here, we can basically say that the code that we found is accurate. So let's look at that code again. We have axillary lymph nodes with or without. Okay, so we're fine, 19307. And the only thing you need to worry about in this case is determining the side of the body. Remember, we discussed if the provider did it bilaterally, we would use a modifier of 50. So in this case, the patient had the services rendered on the right side of the body. And you will have some questions like this on your test. Okay, so let's move on to the diagnosis portion. It shows us that the patient has, and let me pull this up, breast cancer. My mouse wants to stick a little bit today. All right, where is it? I'm not really finding my mouse. Okay, so my mouse is acting up. I apologize. Give me a second to get this thing under control here. All right. So we're going to do, and I have to switch my book to ICD-10, and I'm doing it electronically to save time. Okay, so we have neoplasm, and in this case, basically my index has a little spot here for neoplasm table. But for you, you need to go to the ends in your alpha index of your ICD-10. So we're going to go for the word neoplasm. So now we need to enter or locate the body part. So on your neoplasm table, every body part and organ system is listed alphabetically. So when we get to breast, and this is exactly how your neoplasm table looks, we get to breast, we see that there are different portions of the breast that could be considered coded individually for that particular neoplasm that showed up there or that particular cancer. Okay, so right here we have pretty much the same codes or list of codes, but what we need to know, or what we don't know, is what type of neoplasm it is. Is it primary? Is it secondary? Is it in situ? Is it benign? Is it uncertain behavior? The provider did not specify. So if you look at your case, it just says right breast cancer. So this is where, remember I said, we look at the bottom of the case to determine if a pathology report had been issued to give us the type of malignancy or some more details about the type of cancer the patient has or the cancer's behavior. In this instance, we didn't get any, so we're fine with unspecified. And as you can see, the unspecified code pretty much remains accurate for every portion of the breast. And that's all you do. I know we have a lot of options in the ICD-10 as far as coding, but remember, you match up your case as closely as possible to the descriptions or the words. Okay, so now I'm going to take this code or this information, and I'm going to look at volume, or let's just say the tabular list. And then we're going to look at the excludes note. We're going to look at if anything else should be coded with it, which is not telling us that. We don't have any rules here. We see that this code is a full code, D49.3. This is the full code, so we don't have to worry about adding additional digits. And we know that D49 is the 3-digit category for neoplasm of uncertain behavior of the breast. And then 0.3 is just pretty much the last digit that explains that it's for uncertain behavior. Okay, so we have pretty much coded this entire scenario. Let's look at the scenario to be sure. Okay, so we have inpatient hospital, right breast cancer. Looking down at the report, we're not seeing the type of cancer. It's not listed. We're not seeing pathology portions. We just know that this happened on the right side of the body. So as you can see, everything that we coded here came from our headings, our short description of the procedure, and our short description of the diagnosis. We don't code for anesthesia because we're not coding for the anesthesiologist. It may just say, hey, you know, general anesthesia was given, and that's just for information purposes, but that's it. And then, you know, we have that the provider, and I want to mention this before I let you guys go, he cauterized the patient and he put sutures in there. Now, when we were at the code for the mastectomy, we didn't see any further instructions there explaining that we would code separately for any of this stuff. Basically, when you're dealing with surgery, everything done for the surgery in the major procedure, all the minor services that goes with it are included with the surgery. So that's just a little sidebar note for you guys. So please contact me with questions or concerns, or if you get stumped. Thank you for viewing. Have a great week.